All right, good Tuesday afternoon, everyone. Thanks for stopping by for a check of your forecast. Hope everyone is doing well today. It is December 9th, year of our Lord 2025, a little bit past 4 p.m. here in Amarillo. We're going to break down your forecast here for the near term, kind of look at the big scale pattern as well, talk about what's driving that and how that's going to impact us here in the Texas Panhandle. We'll kind of break it down. It'll be a little lengthy today. Again, don't expect any active weather as far as precipitation is concerned here in the near term, but we are going to talk about maybe a series of cold fronts coming through this week and maybe some really potent cold air at some point in December, where it may be headed, and if we're going to see maybe some impacts from that, whether it be in the heart of the cold or a glancing blow here in the Panhandle. We'll kind of break that down as well. But we're looking at radar and water vapor imagery. You can see we've got some clouds streaming across the central part of the country. A little bit of some snow being picked up there in the Midwest, and we've got that trough starting to dig in. That's going to allow for some lake effect snow here in the coming days, and that's also going to allow for our next cold front to push through as well. It has been a pretty warm day today. 69 out at the airport in Amarillo, 71 in Pampa, 73 in Tucumcari, 68 in Dalhart, 68 in Clovis, and 66 there in Silverton. Here's those wind speeds. They're around 5 to 15 miles per hour from the west-southwest. That's that downslope wind that's helping keep us nice and toasty for mid-December standards. The lows for tonight, even though that front comes through, it's going to be a warmer start tomorrow than it was today. We'll be in the 30s almost area wide, maybe a few of us just below freezing north of the Canadian River as we get into the afternoon tomorrow. We do take a noticeable dip down in temperatures, but it's not going to be a necessarily cold December day. It'll be more seasonal. We'll climb into the 50s for those afternoon temperatures. But again, a noticeable 15-degree drop in temps is, again, just due to that cold front that'll push through overnight tonight. Here's those highs for tomorrow: 57 in Amarillo, 58 in Clarendon, 53 in Perryton, 58 for Tucumcari. Let's go ahead and run you through the next couple of days. That next front again swings through tonight, should come through Amarillo a little after midnight, we expect, and then by tomorrow morning, everyone dealing with a north breeze around 10 to 15 miles per hour. Ridge of high pressure helps turn the winds back to the southwest very quickly. But again, it should be a colder day tomorrow than it was today, just with that cool air pushing through. As we start to see that westerly wind come back into play Thursday, that's going to heat us right back up. Again, this is why we're talking about that roller coaster ride. Temperature's a little cool one day, kind of hot the next. It's very possible we get into the 70s on Thursday. I don't know if we're going to hit any record highs. Amarillo's daily record high for Thursday is 80 degrees. That was set back in 1939. I think that might be a little tough to achieve for us for this go around, but there are some other records out there. Dalhart 74, Guyman 77, Borger 75, Goodwell, Oklahoma at 74. So some of these, again, may have a chance to be broken. Clovis, I think your high is kind of the most easily achieved one at 72 on Thursday afternoon. So it may record breaking, probably not area wide, but there may be a climate site here or there that does get to a daily record high Thursday afternoon before our next cold front swings through, and then we're back down into the fridge for Friday. So here's the overall pattern. Just really kind of dealing with the big ridge stuck kind of in the desert southwest. There may be a very weak trough or some kind of shortwave disturbance pushing through early next week through the desert southwest. But I mean, the main flow of the jet stream is still going way up over our heads and then through the Midwest. You can see a big trough out there just off the coast of New England. So the active weather still looks like it's going to remain well north of our latitude there in the mid 30s. We're talking about, latitudes of 45 plus, where you'll start seeing some more active weather up there in the Pacific Northwest, the Dakotas, the Midwest. New England probably will still be dealing with some relatively active weather, and you can see there's even another ridge building in right on the heels of this little disturbance there that's just kind of broken down the difference in these two maximas for the ridge of high pressure. But we'll probably have a pretty dominant ridge built in over the middle part of December here in the desert southwest, and we do want to talk about why that's the case. So let's go ahead and talk about it. We talked about this yesterday. This is the West Pacific Oscillation. This is the American ensemble. Look at how far negative this thing is expected to dip through the weekend. We're talking about 4 standard deviations away from normal. I mean, we're talking about an extremely negative phase for the West Pacific Oscillation. And It's not just the American that's talking about that. The Europeans in consensus with that. The Canadians in very good consensus with that. I mean, it's got a standard deviation of -4 for a couple of days moving into next week. Now, when we talk about a West Pacific oscillation, we're talking about the height anomalies out here over in the West Pacific. And you can see this area of red and almost pinks. This is that West Pacific oscillation. The height anomalies are well above normal, which would indicate a negative oscillation. I know that's a little bit counterintuitive. But basically, you've got this ridge of high pressure that's built in over the southern parts of the Bering Sea, over the West Pacific. And what that does is it helps kind of create some of this cross-polar flow where you have some of the Siberian air come in through the poleward region and then down through the Canadian provinces. Keep in mind, we did have that stratospheric warming event a couple of weeks ago that, again, kind of has faded away. We do have almost split flow in the stratosphere, so we may start seeing some of those effects start to trickle down into the lower levels of the atmosphere closer to the surface. And this, the West Pacific oscillation, definitely going to help aid in funneling some of that colder air across the North Pole and into the Canadian provinces, and probably eventually into the eastern half of the country. I mean, if we just kind of put this and roll this out, you can see that big ridge out there over the Bering Sea really doesn't go anywhere. It does kind of weaken some moving into the beginning of next week, but again, trying to build back in and just kind of stuck there over the western half of Alaska. And you can see troughing fairly persistent over here over the Canadian provinces. They're closer to the North Pole. Again, all that's going to do is just funnel this cold air through the plains region. And again, this was not my idea. I did see someone else do this, and I thought it was a very good way to demonstrate it. But we went ahead and looked at all of the index values of the West Pacific oscillation dating back to 1950. We basically told ChatGPT to grab us some strong negative anomalies in that data set that happened in the month of December. And so we've got 1989 here as a good value, 95, 2005, 2010, 13, and 2009, not 24. This one was only -33. We used a value of -1 or higher for that standard deviation. So what we did was we basically went over to the physical science laboratory and spit all these temperature anomalies out for those Decembers when the West Pacific oscillation was extremely negative. And so you've got, again, a very good telling sign that we'll probably continue to see cold air filtered into the eastern half of the country while the West Pacific oscillation, or the WPO, is negative. And that's probably going to be something that we're dealing with for the next couple of weeks. So we're probably going to be stuck in this northwest flow pattern for quite some time. I mean, it's not like it's going to be northwest flow all the way through December, but I do think a large majority of our pattern is probably going to resemble this all the way through at least Christmas Day, probably even into that last week of December as well. And you can just see historically that's boded very well for some very cold weather up in the Midwest, up in New England. For us, we do kind of get more of a glanced blow here in the Texas Panhandle, but you can see, we're in that first to second shade. I mean, our temperature anomalies are anywhere from 1 to about 3 degrees below normal with that data set and those analog years that we've kind of put in here. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, if the West Pacific oscillation's negative, we tend to get that very La Nina-like, these Arctic air outbreaks, but dry weather, unfortunately, through the high plains. And that's something that we're kind of stuck in here over the next couple of weeks. So if you are a snow lover, probably not a good thing to be here in the high plains. But if you do love these dry, very persistent, very consistent cold fronts, this is the pattern to certainly be in. The further west you get, the warmer it gets. California probably going to be pretty hot through the month of December. Would not expect you guys to see much moisture. A lot of that should still stay up in the northwest towards Portland and Seattle. And again, you can see again just that trough and that cold air continues to stay focused there in the eastern half of the country. The Climate Prediction Center does have us kind of on the warmer side, but there is going to be a battle zone somewhere in here through the plains where you go from above average temperatures to below average temperatures. And that's inevitably where you'll get a pretty good gradient of temperatures to allow for some mid-latitude cyclones to develop at some point. We'll eventually flop patterns, whether that is end of December, early January. It's going to be kind of hard to break, I think, over the next 2 weeks. So I would not bank on us getting any moisture anytime soon. The Climate Prediction Center, I would even be more boastful about us being drier than this over the next 6 to 10 days. I'd be very hard pressed to say that we'll see any moisture before the 20th of December. There are some signs maybe for a flip to a different PNA pattern towards Christmas Day and maybe New Year's Eve, kind of in that range there, the last few days of December in 2025, where we may get some more troughing to try and develop here in the western half of the country. Obviously, that's way out in la la land, so we don't want to put too much weight on that. But between now and the 20th of December, I mean, the next 10 days or so, I would be extremely shocked if we ended up with anything more than some of those high base virga showers coming across the area. So here's what the 7 day looks like. Obviously, with this pattern, we're not really going to expect to see any moisture. So you are going to see a lot of sunshine in the 7 day. Just those cold fronts coming in and out of the area, just a battle between the warm and the cool air. A lot of this colder temperatures for the next week are going to really be bottled up in the Midwest, but we will probably get some glanced blows of some chillier weather. I mean, today, kind of hot. Tomorrow, with some of that cold air filtering in, you take a 15-degree dip back up to 70 Thursday. This is a very La Nina-like pattern. Again, it's not uncommon for us to get Arctic outbreaks. In fact, it's usually expected more often in La Ninas than it is in El Ninos. I know El Nino, we tend to be wetter and cooler. The reason we're colder, though, is just for more of the persistent cloud cover rather than these Arctic air masses intruding through the plains. So La Ninas, they usually, you have more of the extremes where you get some stretch of really hot, dry weather, and then you get that Arctic outbreak to invade into the plains, and you just go from sunny and 75 to temperatures below freezing for a couple of days, and that's just a more common thing that you see in this kind of winter rather than an El Nino one. But we'll go ahead and jump back over to it since we kind of talked about it. This is our current La Nina pattern right now. You can see we're probably at the peak of La Nina intensity, which we're right around that half a degree to a degree below normal out here in the central Pacific there along the equator. Notice there is a little bit of some warming starting to unfold or take shape. This was taken yesterday from the sea surface anomalies. We'll see how this transitions. You got a lot of warm water out here. We may start to see some of this wash out as we move into the beginning of 2026. And again, the expectation is we may actually trend more towards El Nino conditions moving towards the summer of 2026. So we'll see how that kind of pans out for our spring severe weather setup and maybe some late season winter systems. We kind of expected the first half of winter to be very dry, very bleak and bland for this year, which certainly seems to have panned out for the most part. A few of us did get that one little snow event last week, but outside of that, it has been relatively dry, and November was top 10 warmest months on record for us, dating back to 1892 for at least Amarillo. So seems like the forecast is on track. Again, as we move into January, February, March, we'll start seeing that transition out of La Nina over to potentially ENSO neutral conditions and maybe even El Nino conditions as we get into maybe the heart of spring season. So which would probably bode better for our monsoon season moving into next year. That being said, though, how long it takes for us to get there is still the question we're trying to figure out. So we'll have to maybe talk more about that as that transition starts to unfold and take place. But that's all I've got for you guys this afternoon. I know we went a little long today. Hopefully you guys found that stuff interesting. Don't forget to hit the like button. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll catch you tonight at 5, 6, and